know something interesting is sure to happen. Well, I think you ought to tell me who you are first. Mr. Rabbit, then why did you ask the question?
Goodness, this is quite extraordinary.
Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?
But today is turning into the most curious adventure I have ever had.
Welcome to the Alice in Wonderland podcast. I'm Georgia Alice, and thank you for joining me as we tumble down yet another rabbit hole together. And I can't wait to get curious today with Sonja Denyse. So Sonja is influenced by her many travels as a child of Air Force parents. She developed a love for expressing through entertainment in her youth. Today, she expresses her talents through FM radio and more. She has been nominated for Radio Personality of the Year from the Wichita Professional Broadcasters Association and has had many achievements, including being the only on-air African-American woman on FM in her region. As an actress, she has credits on a number of productions, and she is the author of a book called Manifesting Beauty. And this is a book on manifesting based on her own experience of being able to manifest her way out of the pits to living her dream life. Sonja shares how to combine science and philosophy to manifest beauty in your own life. So let's get curious. Welcome, Sonja.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
I'm amazing, thank you. And I have to thank you for agreeing to jump on my podcast. So for our listeners, I stumbled across Sonja's work on Instagram, actually. I don't know which hashtag it is that I follow, but you popped up and I thought, wow, my intuition said, I think you need to speak with this woman. So here we are. And I'm going to start off and kick off the podcast with a question that I ask all of my guests. And I love this question because it really makes you, hopefully it makes you think deeply. So the question is, in honor of the name of the podcast, Alice in Wonderland, I want you to imagine that I'm a young Alice from Alice in Wonderland. Let's say I'm around about 7 years old and I'm walking my way through this beautiful Wonderland. Let's call it planet Earth or Instagram. I'm 7 years old.
Right.
And I bump into you. I'm a child and I bump into you and I go, Sonja, what is it that you do? Why are you here? Why are you in Wonderland? How would you respond to a child about the work you do?
I'm here to have fun.
Oh,
I'm here to find out what's inside me. I'm here to explore and to see and to do and to be in awe of and to create and to be inspired and to inspire and to really just have fun, make some mistakes, make some wonderful discoveries and just enjoy myself and not take myself too seriously and never forget to have fun. That's what I would say to you, Alice. Let's go.
Let's go. Grab my hand and let's go and have some fun, right? So hopefully we're going to have a bit of fun today.
Yes, that would be great.
I think it's on the cards. I think it's on the menu.
I do too.
So Sonja, the thing that really sort of piqued my interest around you was the title of your book, and the work that I do delves into a very similar field. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have somebody on the podcast who can share their knowledge and experience and wisdom in a fun way, to help people start to understand how they can deliberately create. And if we look at your book on Amazon, there's a lot of really good reviews around it. Now, I haven't read your book, I have to say, but I have looked at the reviews, and there are some really great reviews there saying that this is a simple and really fun approach at deliberate creation. So I'd love to get an understanding of a little bit of your journey. What's this? Sonja was in the pits to her ideal life.
Man.
So let's rewind. Tell me a little bit about where this all started. What's the pits mean to you?
Oh, man. Well, it really kind of started when I was a child. I would have these dreams and I would have experiences. And I would tell my family about them. And according to them, I was always with my wild imagination. I also am a victim of, I guess that would be incest. I was molested by an uncle and also was not believed about that. So there was a lot of things that happened when I was a child that caused me to, instead of continue to talk to everybody, because they kind of were like, oh, you and your wild imagination, because we grew up with, you know, what would be in the suburban area. It's something that wouldn't be to be expected. My parents were professional. You know, I lived a very sheltered life, so it wasn't something that they saw that was even possible. Like, how could that be in our home, in our family, you know? And that caused me to kind of go within. I used to also watch Bewitched. So the way that I started to process it as a child is I was like, oh, I must be a witch, because I would have dreams, and then we would go someplace and I would tell my parents, I'd be like, oh my God, we were here. That person did it. And my mom, she was like, well, that's called deja vu. And my dad, a computer programmer, was like, you're crazy. You know what I mean? Like, he used to really, he instilled a lot of doubt in me, which actually is great, because it made me question and made me seek proof for what I was going through. Because I for a while there, I was like, I might be a little crazy, because when I go to talk to this with adults about, it seems to be that I'm having these things that are happening, people were not understanding that. That led to confusion, which of course, as a young girl, that makes you reach out. So I have the classic telltale, dealing with the wrong guys. And my story, as far as that is concerned, to wrap it up as nicely as I can, the movie Enough with Jennifer Lopez, with the crazy, charming guy who was a little abusive, but nobody believed it, chased her around the country. That was my story. I one day came home from school, and my daughter's father was in my aunt's house in the basement. We, like, to this day, we have no idea how he found her address, how he showed up there. It was a very, just really crazy experience. After that, I went back to my witchdom, okay? And so-called, I thought, was casting a please go away type spell. And he did. And therefore, that made me say, okay, I need to take this opportunity. Then my father committed suicide. And he retired highest rank from the Air Force, or Master Sergeant in the Air Force. And my daughter had just been born. She was 4 months. And that just, I really can't explain to you how much that tore me up. I thought I was seeing him everywhere. It was just a very, very depressing and hard time, because there was a lot of unresolved issues going on. And again, when that all happened, I started getting creative. I turned within and started dreaming. I ended up going to college, and then I became a school bus driver. And as I was a school bus driver, that's when I started getting back into my witchdom again.
I like how you call it witchdom.
Yeah, witchdom, because I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody else, when I would talk to people about, you know, thinking and like tuning in and like hearing these sounds and having these feelings up and down my spine and in the back of my head, when I would talk to people about it, they were just like, you know, so I was just like, okay. I was just trying to explain it to myself. And I ended up getting into radio. I was a school bus driver, so there's a lot of skipping, because there's so much life that was lived. I'm trying to just kind of like, you know, get from where the pits to where it started getting really, really cool. And I used to go out and rollerblade. So after I started getting my crystals, and then I would meditate, and I would have intentions, and I was having my feelings and visioning and in my head. And I've always kind of heard this, like, I always thought that it was me, but they say that you have your subconscious, and then there's a running tape that plays in your head all day. So the reason why I never said anything to anybody, because I was like, I have psychosis or I'm schizophrenic, like, because when you take psychology classes in college, the professor always tells you never self-diagnose yourself. Don't do it. But you start reading some of the symptoms when you're into manifesting and tapping into energy, and they sound very similar. I was just like, I think I'm crazy. But it seems to be working for me. So what happened, I became a school bus driver, and the kids, we would listen to the radio daily while I was driving them. And they would always be like, oh, Miss Sonja, you should be on the radio too. Because we would listen, and I would say stuff and they would say stuff. And we were just, oh my gosh, we were just having so much fun. And one day they dared me to go up to the radio station. And I did. I had already been roller skating in the park, dreaming about actually doing it, because they kept saying you should do it, and I kept seeing myself doing it, and I was like, I should do it. I've been doing this for a long time. I could do it. And then I went. And it was unreal, the reception that I got from, her name is Jessica. I walked in, and I always love to tell this story, because I walked in and I said, you cannot do this to this day. It's never going to happen now. Back in those days, I walked in and I said, I don't care what it is. If I can wipe their ass and bring them donuts, I just want an internship here. And she cracked up and was like, wouldn't you rather get paid? And I was like, yeah. And then that's how the radio career started. And it's just been going. Now, of course, there's been lots of, there's been hiccups and things like that since, because life is never perfect, but it's definitely been a very, very cool adventure, and I've learned how to tune in and tap in and not worry about what the outside world is saying, to understand that I am hearing, I am tapped in. I've also come up with exercises and experiments, because I do tend to, I want to be reassured. I just want to make sure I'm not making things up,
I need some validation that I'm not crazy.
Because when you talk to people who are not willing to go down the rabbit hole, such as you are, this is very they make the faces that they make are like, yeah, okay, which at first, when I first on this journey, that put a wobble in my vibration, because then I thought, oh, well, then maybe I am making this up. Maybe I am crazy, which I actually am grateful for, because again, then it made me seek out validation with experiments, because I do feel like this is something that people need to know. There's nothing special about me. There's nothing that nobody else can't do. I mean, it's just that I was curious, and because I was curious, the answers began to reveal themselves, and it's just, it's like, it is the greatest adventure of my life.
I love that you're calling it an adventure. And one of the things that I really love hearing from you is that, you conducted experiments. So a lot of people will potentially hear what you're saying, or even the title of your book, Manifesting, like having that in the title, would go, oh yeah, more of that garbage, that crazy woman sort of stuff. However, I think coming with an open mind to information, but then especially what you're saying is conducting experiments. So talk to me about some of the experiments that you've conducted, or what you encourage people to do to experiment with their own inner, what do you call it? Witchiness, power.
The inner witchiness, your interconnectedness.
Yeah, exactly.
So what? The most famous experiment that got the whole quantum physics is the double slit experiments, where they were shooting the protons through the light, and how once they were actually looking at it, then that's when they actually went into the order. So it's that, along with Albert Einstein's the entanglement theory, that is the easiest one, and I feel like most of us do all the time, but people, they totally shrug it off. They totally think it's just nothing, when they do it. When you go out and you stare at somebody across the room, or you stare at an animal, particularly, I personally like to do it with animals versus with people, just because animals are more in that nature instinct. So if they feel the energy, they're going to respond to it, versus people now, especially with the cell phones and Instagram and Facebook and all of that good stuff. People can feel someone looking at them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they will turn and look. A lot of the times they do, though. But I that is the best one to give, that you can do right away within the hour, just to show yourself that your thoughts are things. The other one I like to do is when you think of a color, or a game I like to play, sometimes I'll think of a color and a color of a shirt that I might be wearing, and then I'll say I'll have an intention. And the funny thing about when you play these games, though, is when you go out and you try to force the game to happen, that's when it doesn't happen. And I feel like that's why people think that this is all BS, because it's really about learning how to tune into that impulse that's going to lead to the manifestation, versus you saying this is when it's going to happen. So right now, what I feel like my biggest message, apparently, that is shaping up, that I'm finding, is the explanation for people to know that manifesting and motivation is two separate things. And you cannot make this happen. Although you do make it happen, but you can't make it happen. And I feel like that's where people get confused, when in explanation, that's where the argument starts. It's because we'll make it happen right now.
My take on that is that when we try to force an outcome, so I think this is probably what you're saying, like you can think about something, but if you're going to try and force it and interfere, you're interfering with how those atoms are rearranging themselves. You're trying to pluck them out of thin air and make them happen according to your will, instead of the will of the atoms. So
right.
Yeah, so you're trying to interfere in there, and if you interfere, it's like when you watch TV, the old TV tubes, we're going to show our age here, right? And
right.
You get the static. That's interference
Mm-hmm.
with the energy, with the signal. So if we're going to put our finger in and try and make the things turn up to our desire, to the way we think they should be, well, then we're coming from our limited thinking, instead of being open and expansive to the entanglement theory, and allowing those atoms to rearrange themselves perfectly the way that they know intuitively to rearrange themselves in our path.
Yes. And what's so interesting, though, is that when you learn how to let go and let the atoms rearrange themselves, they actually rearrange themselves exactly the way that you wanted them to. That's what was so, for me, mind-boggling, and like it kept tripping me up, kind of like when you do the vision boards and you do the scripting, and when you do the visualizing and you do the affirmations, and you try to water the soil, or you're trying to make yourself be in a frequency so that you can make something happen, I find that that actually holds it off even further. It might come and now it's really wonky. It's the most interesting thing ever, how simple it is, yet it's very complex. But you don't make it complex. If you keep it simple, it will get more complex, but you have to stay simple. It's fascinating.
It is the polarities of life, right? Simplicity and complexity on the same poles, and knowing how to navigate between them. So what are some of the other experiments? So you've had an experiment where you're thinking about, or potentially just focusing or looking at an animal. This is my understanding of the experiment.
Yes.
And what are you doing when we look at the animal? Are we sending them energy,
you can communicate with the animal. So what I like to do is, especially like when I'm taking my walks or whatever, and you'll see like birds, for example, are great, except for the little tiny ones, because they're always scared. But some of the other animals, it's almost like you don't want to do some of the things that people are doing now where they're like going to zoos and getting into animals' cages. I'm not talking about where we're trying to go up to a bear and trying to convince the bear that we're, emitting the love energy and please don't come running at me. Like, I'm not suggesting anything like that. However, like taking the walk and you see the birds maybe sitting on the fence, you can practice your frequency so that when you walk by or when you're approaching, they don't feel fear and need to flight. They don't feel the need to fly away because they're not feeling a frequency that is not harmonic with theirs. So that's something that you can do. I like the other day I was in a car and I stopped on the highway and there was a deer there, so I've been recording myself doing this now. So I said, hello, and, she peeked her head up and she was looking right at me, just staring at me, just chewing. And it was the funniest things, I'm just talking to her. And then as I left, she just went back to eating the grass. Fish that jump out of the water. That's another fun thing that I've been experimenting with, is communicating with the fish and saying, hey, I'm putting you on my Instagram, come on out and show yourself. Those type of fun things. I've also done some bean experiments with the garden. I've done some garden experiments. There's a lot of different, there's also the dowsing rods, making the rods move with my mind, telling them where to point and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I would really, the thing that I would like to be able to do, get myself to, mentally, I have to get myself past the laws of physics, is being able to levitate. That's a whole nother,
that's next level.
Yeah, that's really, really next level. But I do think that it's possible. I do think that humans do have the ability to travel or levitate, and not just the mental, no disrespect to anybody, but not just the travel and meditation that when I hear somebody say, oh, we're going to travel, and then I get all excited and then I go and listen to it, and it's a mental travel. I mean a physical, I think, but I do think that there are certain levels that each individual has to get to before that can happen.
So it's a good experiment to conduct, hey? So that would be definitely a different and a higher vibration, I believe.
Yes. I keep having dreams of being able to fly, of being able to jump and fly. So I do understand that is freedom, and I do feel free, and I do, gravitate towards the birds and everything. But in the dreams, it's very, like, my body is sore afterwards. So I'm kind of like, I think it's going to be a possibility soon. So, for some people.
You'll have to reach out to us when you've achieved that, so we
can
talk about it. And look,
I'll fly over.
One of the things I love about you is that you're curious but having fun with this. It's not like, hey, maybe there's a possibility that I can levitate, but not discrediting it, not thinking that maybe you can't. Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, it's like that.
I think some of the yogis in India are known to have done it. So.
And I think is it Chris Angel or somebody is getting ready to levitate above the earth or something like that. There's going to be something happening on YouTube. And it's like the 9-minute mile, right? That nobody was able to do it till that first guy did it. And then people started breaking the record over and over again. So I do think that, sometimes it does take somebody who, for whatever reason, curious in their own life, begun to question, and came upon some things and decided that they were going to levitate.
They're going to experiment with it and give it a go. So
right,
in your book, talk to me more about some of the things that are in your book, because as I said, I haven't read it, but what are some of these things that you're sharing? Because you do talk about the combining the science with the philosophy. So what are some of the things that you share in there for people to understand a little bit more around this manifestation? I like to call it deliberate creation. So yes. Let's hear some of the things that you write about.
Well, what I think that the first thing that is important to know about the deliberate creation is having an understanding that we're not here of our own making, and being able to root out what the spiritual books were trying to tell us versus getting so much into the religion. I do think that having an understanding and not going into saying that, necessarily the creation, that earth was made in 7 days and all of that, that's not the point that I'm talking about. The point is that science has shown us that there's time, there's space, there's matter. We are here in this universe is what we've come up with, right? But there's some people who say it's a hologram. There's some people who were, saying that we're inside of a bubble. The point is that you did not create yourself to get here. And your parents, the action between your parents did not create your personality. So once I feel like people have a grasp of this understanding, when we look at babies, we see that they come here and they have personality. Same babies in the same family, they all have different personalities, which in my opinion shows you that we're coming from somewhere, you know what I mean? And that we are not the bodies that we think we are. So once you have an understanding, or at least a curiosity to find out what we are, once you do that, that's the spiritual aspect. The science aspect is where you can start looking at some of the experiments that I feel like explain the spiritual part of the religious, what they're trying to say. The science just kind of backs it all up. So the physics of it, you are what you think, as Yeshua or Jesus, however you want to say his name, as he was saying, you are what you think. And science shows us that, your brain there's neurons that are firing, and they go out, and then these proteins are making things happen and moving things around. So it's not that there's necessarily a dogma, but what they were trying to say is they were trying to put it in a way for us to have an understanding. And I feel like this understanding and translation got so mixed up with people's... See, I don't like to say that ego is bad, but I do understand what people are saying when they say that ego is bad. There have been people who have exerted control and have taken this information and turned it into a whole bunch of stuff that now people are afraid to even look at it, and they don't know that the information will actually set them free. So the combination of the science, where you are looking at the quantum mechanics and you're looking at quantum physics, and the religious philosophies, that most of the religions it seems to be that they're kind of the same. Like, even though they're different, but they're kind of the same, but if you take both of them and you use them, if you ask for truth, and this is where I find that there has to be something, whether you call it dark matter, dark consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it, there does seem to be some type of energy that is shifting, molding, helping us, if we learn how to work with it, that can, if you take they seem like they're different, but I think that it's the same wave, just one is explaining the other. If you then take the two and combine that, you then can walk your own walk, and then you'll see that there is something out there helping you. And that's the point. And since I've made so many mistakes in my life, and since I've done so many things in my life, I felt like there was no way that there would be, and again, I don't like to necessarily use the word, but when I use the word, people will understand what I'm talking about, that God would be talking to me, and that I would, be the smallest little gifts. If you like a butterfly, a certain color butterfly, when you have a correct thought, and then the bird, stops and stares at you and gives a little beep beep or whatever, something that you like, there seems to be confirmations that happen, synchronicities, when you have a thought and then you go out and you see it, or you have a desire that you just little daydream. Oh, wouldn't that be cool? And then you go out and it happens. These type of things, it makes you jot them down. I have journals upon journals of the experiments and the experiences, such as when this all started, 12, 12, 12. So some of the research that I've been doing over the years have been about water, have been about the astrology, have been astroscience, the science of the planets, and I've been reading and looking at all kinds of stuff for many, many years. So on 12, 12, 12, very interestingly enough, and I have pictures, and maybe I'll have to send you one. I kind of screamed at the sky. I said, "Show that you're with me," because I'm beginning to sound crazy, because I've been having so many experiences in front of people with witnesses, and they were kind of like looking at me like, whoa, like really cool stuff happens when you're around. But it was just kind of like, so I have cool experiences. So what? you know what I
We
mean?
all
like,
can, right?
Yeah, you know what I mean? So what? So I'm seeing cool stuff. And I do think that there has been a shift in the universe, because everybody was so looking forward to this 12, 12, 12. And I'm sure that there's many other teachers and people who've had experiences. But for me on that day, I screamed out, "Show that you're with me." We were outside working out. And once I did, I saw a smile rainbow, an upside down rainbow. And then I got this most spectacular rainbow show where it was like fishtail ends, and then it went to the other side, straight up and down, smile rainbow. It was so amazing. I was working out with a friend, and doing bicep curls, and when this happened, because Christina is a very she's not now. She is believe you me, after that experience, she's a believer now. She ended up getting pregnant a
The
year
rainbows
later.
were the answer, right?
Oh my gosh, she wanted babies and all of that good stuff. But when it happened, it was so spectacular. I'd never seen anything. It was a beautiful day. There was no clouds, no rain, no nothing, and this beautiful rainbow show. And she goes, "Get your camera," because nobody's going to believe you when you tell them this story of seeing straight up and down rainbows, the upside down rainbow. A rainbow went from the fishtail, it went from this end, then it went to that end, fishtail. So like I said, I'll send you pictures that you can look at,
Beautiful.
that I was a little bit,
It's
but I do
interesting.
think
It's
the world
interesting
changed.
it's interesting what you say with your friend Christina. So now she seems to have now starting to see that there are some things that we can influence through
Yes.
our being. And one of the things I love in the work that I do a lot of different work, and I help people become deliberate creators, similar to the work you do. And
I know.
one of my favorite things from my clients is when I receive, and I get these constantly, is when people are starting to open up and realize the science and the philosophy and how the two merge really nicely. One's based on story, one's based on some evidence of the stories, and they come together. One of the things I love is when I get an email or a text and it starts off with exactly the same words every time. "You're not going to believe this." And every time that comes through, I have a little bit of a chuckle to myself, because I say to myself, yes, I am.
Right?
Because I've seen it happening just like you in our own lives. We've been able to experiment, and when the experiments produce results, we do the experiment again and we get the same results. So now we have our hypotheses is now starting to be scientifically proven for ourselves. Now, what I want everyone to be, all of our listeners to be really mindful of, is that you need to conduct your own experiments. Don't just take George's word for it. Don't take Sonja's word for it, but start to conduct your own experiments and get curious. But also, when you're conducting the experiments, have an understanding of what the science is. So you touched really briefly before on, the particles from turning from waves to particles. So our thoughts are waves. How do we get them to become particles? So understand the science behind it when you start to do your experiments. Understanding the observation. So when something is observed, it becomes matter. What does that mean for you as you're deliberately creating? What does that mean
Now
for you?
here's
Yeah, so that's the thing people need to be mindful of.
yes, this is what is so interesting about you bringing that up, because that has been the next level of my questioning, is that looking at that double slit experiment, when you are observing your experiment, when you are manifesting, because technically we're all manifesting, we are all transmitters. It's just the way that we're made. Again, there's nothing special about this. Well, let me back up. There's everything special about this, but it's not that it's only a certain amount of people can do this. Everyone is naturally manifesting. It is how we work. The thing is that we are all being deluged with so many frequencies and so many radio waves and gamma waves, and just, oh my goodness, it's unbelievable. So therefore your brain is kind of in a soup, almost, so to speak, and like being just like tossed about in the ocean every day, all day. And these smartphones and oh my gosh, and everything. I mean, although we are using it for wonderful, but in reality, it's very hard for people to be able to keep focus and be able to manifest, because so much is going on. So focus is really key in order to being able to create the atmosphere. What I've noticed is if I'm looking at my manifestation too much, then it might produce a wobble, because if you're not very careful on where your frequency is, then that in itself, whether you're actually looking at the experiment or not, has an effect on the experiment. With my beanstalks, with the growing of the plants, those are the perfect example, because it's not something that you're actually doing, and it's literally how you're feeling every day. What kind of frequencies you're putting out there in the air is the plant is picking up on. So if you have a couple of bad days, that does affect your manifestation. But the thing is that you're gonna have a couple of bad days. So
It's life, right? The rhythm of life.
you know what I
And you
mean?
said it earlier, you know, life's not perfect. We make mistakes, but understanding, I think, the true essence of who we are can help us start to create and pull ourselves out of, to use your terms, the pit or the soup of distraction that we're all being bombarded with at the moment. One of the things that came to mind when you were talking just now was
Yes.
an experiment that was conducted many years ago, and I can't remember the name of the scientist, but it's called the chick experiment. And I don't know if you have seen or heard this. So what it is based on is when a chicken is born, it sends love to its mother. It has this bonding energy with its mother. So this is pure, unadulterated love, a beautiful, you know, magnetic frequency. So the experiment was conducted, and it's somewhere in Europe, and I think if you go deep enough, you can find videos of it on YouTube, or you can find the chick experiment explained.
I believe I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So what happens is the scientist has what they call a random generator of a computer. And what this computer does, and this is for our listeners who may not have heard of this experiment, what this computer does is it just randomly moves in a room, just makes random sequence. There's nothing programmed into it. And what they did is when these chicks were hatched, they were hatched with the random generator in the room. So they immediately started to bond with it, thinking it was its mother. So now they had an energetic connection to this random generator. They then took the chicks out of the room and put them behind a glass screen. The collective chicks, these little baby chicks, wanted to be closer to their mother. And what they noticed was the random generator, a computer, started spending more time, was drawn to the energy of the chicks. And the random generator spent more time up near the chicks than what it did beforehand. So now we can see that the energy. Now, I don't know if chicks can think, right? But it was the frequency of these little baby chicks that
Mm-hmm.
was influencing matter, a machine.
Yep. Yep.
So for our listeners, I want you just to ponder that and maybe dive down that rabbit hole and start thinking, well, if a group of chickens can make a computer come closer to it, what else can we do, right? What else? What can humans do?
I'm just saying there's so many things that we have an ability to do and manifest. It is really a beautiful and wonderful thing. And again, it's not that you're going to have this perfect life. That's the point of manifest beauty, is that we are taking the chaos. And again, this is the scripture talk, you know, that the earth was void and it was full of chaos. Oh, okay.
You're back. We lost you for a second, but that's okay.
Producer's calling me. With the word, when the word comes through, that was the word of God. The word, that's thought. And it's so beautiful because it was explaining it to us right there in the beginning, bam, you know, and somehow the argument came into be about that the earth could not possibly have been created in 7 days. The unbelievable distraction, like sometimes I get so angry because it's like the unbelievable distraction that is where you took the thought instead of realizing that they were saying it was void, and the thought and then communication of the word went out into the void, into the chaos, and made things happen. And then to hear the scripture that faith is the substance of things unseen, you know, and it goes hand in hand. Like it's telling you right there, you know, but we get again caught up in the man's law and the religion part of it, and you turn a blind eye, you know, and
Yeah.
and it's understandable.
Yeah, and we all do see the world through different lenses and perspectives based on, you know, how we were brought up. And some people are blessed with a more of an open mind and are willing to experiment and be curious. Some people are brought up with dogma, and this is the way the world is. And, you know, that's okay. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that you're still not creating your reality based on your dogma.
That's right.
Because you are going to see the world through that lens. You're going to, you know, there's a part of our brain, our filtering system, the reticular activating system, that's only going to filter things based on what is familiar to you anyway. So how about broadening your familiarity and being curious about things and just and start experimenting with life, I think. So Sonja, as we start to round out today, is there anything from your journey so far that you would love our listeners to be mindful of, to consider, to experiment with? I was going to say advice, but it's probably not advice because we don't give advice on this podcast.
Yeah, we don't really give advice.
Encourage curiosity. So is there anything that you believe may be able to help our listeners start to experiment with deliberately creating something in their life?
You know, it's funny because when you do speak of the deliberate creation, I feel like for me, when I got introduced to The Secret, number one, I felt like, oh my gosh, it's confirmation. But then I felt very scared and worried because then it was like, oh my God, my thoughts are creating this. I am creating, you know, and it can be intimidating. So my advice is the wrong word, but my encouragement is that nobody is perfect at manifesting. You're already doing it. Have way more fun with this. Take your time. Please understand that when it comes to manifesting, it's not motivation. You're not doing timetables. Please don't listen to those people who are telling you to recite, and I am so sorry, Georgia, if you are telling people this.
Keep going.
But please don't recite certain affirmations every morning. Don't have a routine that you do, because when you do it as a routine, then it's no longer fresh, and you're no longer living from the energy. You're living off of past energy, and you're not actually letting the energy flow. You should be having impulses that you're following. Meditation is a very, very beautiful thing, but the meditation is not what we were told that it was for. It's more for you to tune, and so that you have an understanding for your own self what that really good, I call it jizzy feeling, that jizzy feeling is for yourself. And when you have that feeling and then go throughout your day, when you then experience that feeling again, because maybe you looked at a tree, maybe you saw a bird, or maybe the light was green, maybe somebody smiled at you, whatever, something that happens throughout that day that matches that feeling that you had in meditation, then understand that that's that frequency now being matched up. And if you can be in awe, not surprised, but if you can be in awe and be like, oh my gosh, that was because, and kind of like acknowledge it, then it will grow and you'll begin to experience more. Because I would like for people to get past the angel numbers, the 111 and the 333 and the 444, because that is wonderful and that's great, but there's so much more for us to be exploring and for us to be doing. We could be, the point of manifesting, in my message, is that there's two ways that you could be living. You're either living by the tree of life, by the spirit, or you are living by the sweat of your brow, by your willpower. And neither is more correct than the other, because we need both for balance. But I will say that living by the spirit is a lot more fun.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so thank you. That's some really great encouragement. And in relation to what you're saying about affirmations and so forth, one of the things that I do agree with you there is that when you're starting out, sometimes you might need a reminder or a trigger for you to start tuning into a frequency. So sometimes a declaration of purpose can be helpful initially, but it's not the answer. This is it's not that affirmation that's creating it. It's what it's making you feel inside. So
Yes.
For some of us starting out, when we may have been living a life not conscious of our emotions and our frequency and the awe and the joy, sometimes these little practices initially can start to help you tune in. It becomes a muscle that you build. Then you don't need to do it anymore. So for some of us, some people, you may need something to help you build the muscle of feeling more, instead of, because some of us don't. We don't notice those frequencies. So every now and then, some people may need something that is a reminder, but I'm telling you, don't need it forever. It might be just initially.
Yes, because you have to believe it. And this is where the science part of it comes in with the affirmations. Affirmations are wonderful. Vision board. I have affirmations. I have vision boards. I have all of these things. The thing is, it's kind of like, as a personal trainer, when we go to exercise with somebody, just as you're saying, so if I have a person who's just beginning, there are some studios that will have a person who's just beginning to work out, get out there and work out like they have been doing it for a long time, and push them real hard and go, and all of that good stuff. And then there's some other trainers who will realize you haven't worked out in 5 years. So instead of having you go and be strenuous for 45 minutes, I'm going to have you do some light exercises, because I want you to believe that you can do it. Once you believe that you can do it, then you're going to take certain actions that will make the exercises more effective. And so that's the point with the affirmations, is that affirmations are beautiful, but if you don't believe it a little bit to begin with, so you have to find the affirmation for, and that's where it's individual. I call it the speaking in tongues language. That's where only the person, like, you can give a person, Georgia, affirmations all day, but only the person who is actually reciting the affirmations that you give to them actually knows, do you believe it? And if you don't believe it yet, please stop saying it, because now you're actually creating resistance from the standpoint that you do not believe it. And you're trying to convince yourself to believe it when you don't need to do that. If you set the intention, and the energy will get you there.
Absolutely. And I think for the people that I work with, first of all, we don't work with affirmations, but they can if they like. But it's something that is very personal. So we may, give some people some ideas, but at the end of the day, it's got to really resonate with you and be resonant with your current belief, and maybe stretch the belief horizon a little bit for you, within reach. So, a lot of people talk about having these amazing big visions that they want to create in their life. Now, that's this amazing vision that's way up, way out of our reach. And I don't believe that I can have that, because it's not within my realm of belief, my experience. But what do you believe out of it? Is there a little tiny piece of that vision that you can bring in front of you now? Do you believe that you can do one step towards that? Now we're growing the belief bubble and energy, and we just keep taking little bits from it, right? So the belief starts to, so it's okay to have those vision boards. They're big, but just take one aspect of it and work on that within your believability. And one thing that one of my mentors taught me very early on, a long time ago, was that, write down the things that you would like to deliberately create in your life, whether it be a job at a radio station, whether it be driving a school bus, whether it be whatever. So write down a list, but then look at them and go, what would I rate my believability on whether I could do that in the next 6 months or not? How much do I believe it? Give it a score out of 10. Anything that you score below 6, put it aside for later. Now choose something you've got a high level of belief on, maybe an 8, 9, or 10. Work on that. Now your belief indicator goes up, and you can look at the other ones and go, whoa, hang on. If I did that, maybe I'll be able to do this other one. So now we're building the muscle of belief.
Yes. And it's beautiful, because, when you do that, when you have the intention of doing that, and what I'm hearing from you is that you're basically helping people along the way, give them mile markers and things that they can do. Because the one thing that I will say, that with the manifesting, and that I do understand that as far as explanation goes, that it's such a lifelong process, that it's not something that you're ever going to stop doing. And unfortunately, once you learn about these things, then you can't go back to,
you can't unlearn them.
You can't unlearn them, and when you try to just go back to being quote unquote normal, your life gets really wonky. It's really wonky. So you can't really go back. But what I do appreciate about what you're explaining is, because there are mile markers that some people do need to have, so that they can understand and know what it is that they're doing, because this is such an abstract topic and conversation and thing that we're doing in life, that it's not always easy to be able to explain it in a way so that other people who are beginning to get curious about this journey and wanting to go down that rabbit hole can then look back and say, oh, okay, so I did this and I did, okay, so now I can do, you know what I mean? It is very, I like how you are breaking that down, because I do think that once you get into it for a while, you forget, you know what I mean? You forget about the exercising the belief muscle, even though, like, for example, myself, my belief muscle is always being exercised. That's what's so crazy. That's the other crazy thing is it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this and how much you know and all of that stuff. It's still, you're still constantly learning and breaking through and going to new levels and doing new things and finding deeper things about yourself. And oh my gosh, it's just amazing. It's amazing.
It's fun.
It's amazing.
It's absolutely fun.
Yeah.
Sonja, thank you so much for your time. And if people would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way, or how can they reach you, and how can they follow you and hear more of your wonderful wisdom and experience?
Well, thank you. I'm on Instagram. You can Google me. There's several different ways that you can get in contact with me. SonjaDenyse on the Google or whatever engine searches you have. I'm on Instagram as well, Sonja Denyse. The book Manifest Beauty. Writing another one. I'm very excited. That's the part that you saw. So the next book coming out is Manifesting Beauty, How the Law of Attraction Keeps Saving My Life. It does. That book is coming out next. But yeah, I'm on all of the social media platforms, SonjaDenyse.
Thank you so much. And I think one of my greatest takeaways from today is, and something I'd like to share with our listeners, is to potentially, all it takes is to be curious, but believe in possibility.
Yes, that's all it takes. It's really all it takes.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight.
Today is turning into the most curious adventure I have ever had.